This is ego-utilitarianism. This is the relative theory of value for dummies, part 3, information asymmetry. And in this presentation, I'm going to talk about when you're making a subjective valuation to try to estimate relative value, how information and intelligence asymmetry plays a factor in how accurate one's subjective value is compared to relative value. Okay, so again, relative value of a good to a consumer is the R function. It depends upon the inherent properties of a good and the state of a consumer. Any attempt at evaluating the relative value of a good is dependent upon the subject or person, thus creating a subjective valuation that is dependent upon both the quality of information and the intelligence of the person attempting to evaluate the relative value of a good. In other words, subjective value is an estimation of relative value. Again, intelligence is the ability to process information. So again, your mind is composed of raw data and intelligence, how it processes that data. It is not necessarily the case that the consumer has an advantage in determining relative value. In most cases, it is true that the consumer himself is privy to the state of the consumer variable. This information asymmetry would give the consumer an advantage in determining relative value if the information of the inherent properties of the good and intelligence to process all information were equal among other possible evaluators. It is also possible that information asymmetry can exist with respect to the inherent properties of the good variable, and also possible that the intelligence of the individual can make up for any deficit in information or provide an advantage to the person making a subjective valuation of relative value. Therefore, the accuracy of the subjective valuation, or how close subjective valuation is with respect to relative value, is dependent upon the quality of information of both variables and the intelligence of the subject. So any deficit in one variable can be compensated for with a surplus in information or the other variable, and or a surplus of intelligence to process all pertinent information. And any deficit in intelligence can be compensated for with better information of the variables that determine relative value. The existence of relative value is why we as consumers sometimes defer choices to experts by giving them information about ourselves so that we can better maximize utility by selecting the good with the highest relative value for our purposes. So you see, the relationship between subjective valuation and relative value. The fact that subjective valuation is imperfect. It relies on both the information the person has about both variables and the intelligence to process that information. It can be done from any perspective as far as evaluating the relative value, or trying to evaluate the relative value using your subjective valuation, which is often which can be and often is wrong. And it shows how experts in certain fields can help us make better decisions. It's not always up to us about what the value of a good is. It's not up to the subject's mind, either the consumers or any other perspective. There's a real value suspended in reality out there that we're trying to determine, that we're trying to match. Anytime we're making we're trying to determine relative value with our subjective valuation. So this is why the subjective theory of value is wrong, right? It lends all weight to the subject's mind, rather than some value that's objective in reality that we're trying to attain. And if that were the case, if you were to extend the idea of value just from a good to general value, you can talk about the value of actions and morality. And when people want to believe that there's an objective morality out there, what's really right and wrong, you can't adopt subjective theory of value and think that morality is objective at the same time. These are incompatible. They're logically inconsistent when taken together. And this is why you would want to adopt something like the relative theory of value. Not only does it make sense in economics or biology and game theory and mathematics. You can use all of those disciplines with the relative theory of value, but you can also construct an objective morality from using relative theory of value. And these are all the advantages that come with the relative theory of value. Not only is its explanatory power much greater than anything out there as far as intrinsic labor and subjective theory of value, but it can also be used to create, to actually not create, but actually try to determine if there's an objective morality out there, what it is. And I'll go into that in more detail in future presentations about my philosophy of ego-utilitarianism and self-interest or self-existence. Okay, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, criticize, share, and thanks for watching.